Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Return It Empty. This happened a number of years ago. I live in Sydney and used to fly up to the Gold Coast 3 or 4 times a year to check on my grandmother. The whole family was in Sydney, so someone would usually pop up once each month to help her out. I would always rent a car from Hertz when I arrived. At the time, they offered a prepaid fuel option where you would pay an amount and not need to refuel before return. It was usually less than you would pay at the local service station, so I usually took this option. As I picked up the keys to this shiny new manual Toyota Corolla, the woman said to me, "So you have the prepaid fuel, just bring it back empty." After a few days of relaxing by the beach, I ran a few errands for my grandmother in the morning before my 15 o'clock flight. The fuel light comes on, and the words of Hertz staff ring in my ear. "Bring it back empty." Not wanting to push it, I pulled into 7-Eleven and put 2 liters in and went on my way. The light didn't extinguish, but with the distance I needed to cover, I figured I'd be safe. At about 13 o'clock, my grandmother is pushing me out the door, telling me to catch my flight. So I make the 6-kilometer trip to the airport, the whole time anxiously wondering if I'll make it with the fuel remaining. As I was coming up to the airport, I felt the engine splutter, but it was still going. Heading in, it started spluttering more, so much so that I generally thought I'd run out mere meters from my destination. As I pulled through the boom gate for rental returns, I put my foot down and got a final burst of acceleration. The car was determined to be the little engine that could. My finish line in sight, and the car is going to make it. Until it didn't. The car stalled, and with the momentum I had, I pulled it into a spot marked Avis, and it only made it about halfway in. I tried in vain to restart it, but it wasn't to be. I got out and pushed the little engine that could into bay 109. I was 11 bays short of the first marked Hertz, and was a broken man. My goal was so near, yet so far. Torment ran through my mind. Did those 11 bays mean I was short of my goal to bring it back empty? I mean, it was in the rental car park after all, and it wasn't uncommon for people to just park in a spot and ignore who owns the spot. I walked into the terminal, carry-on roller bay in one hand, car keys in the other, and walk up to rental returns. "Can I help you?" the same young woman asks as I walk up to her. "Returning a car," I said. She takes the paperwork and asks where I had parked it. "Bay 109. It says Avis," I respond. Her not looking up, she shrugs and talks into the radio on the counter. "Return 109. Finally, she says, "Did you fill it up?" I say no, and she asks roughly how much is left. "None," I say. "Oh, so the petrol light is on. No worries." "No," I say. I mean, it ran out of fuel as I drove in. I had to push it into the parking spot. The helpful woman gives me a blank stare for a full 10 seconds. "Wait, you let it run out? You said to return it empty, so I accepted your challenge. Seems I win," I said with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. The staff member turns to her colleague, points at me and says, "Prepaid fuel," and he says it ran out in the car park. The guy looks at me with a smirk and says, "Really?" "Well, it wouldn't start back up," I reply, as someone comes in from outside to get the keys. "It's out of fuel," the woman says. "That's okay, I'll run it up to Shell after I've washed it," he replies. Both terminal staff look at him as the woman, looking at me, says, "No, the customer says he had to push it into the spot." Cue the largest eyes I've ever seen. I have to see this. He walks out with me, and the guy from behind the counter following behind, opens the car and tries to start it. It's cranking, but won't turn over, as all 3 of us burst out laughing. "I've never had one fully out before," he says. I tell him, "The woman in there told me to bring it back empty." Then I walked inside, laughing, to check my bags. The next story is called Exactly As I Wrote It. I was the editor of a small town newspaper. A local man wanted to run his print campaign advertisements for elected office. He'd done this a few times before in a number of unsuccessful bids for election. Now he had returned and was giving us an earful. The only reason I lost the last time was because all my ads got changed and looked stupid. We had changed his ad with us. Slightly. He'd misspelled the name of the office he'd been running for, so we had corrected it. Apparently, that made the ad look different than what he wanted and had somehow cost him the election. I'm paying you for these ads, so this time I demand you print it exactly as I wrote it. No changes. He stormed off, and I figured the issue was over. Made my job easy. I thought, there's no need to proofread this. Just send it over to our advertising person. But let me take a look anyway. I read it over and told others, and it wasn't long before the whole office had a good laugh. His advertisement read, his name for elected office. Always there, for you to help. What makes it even better is we later learned he had apparently made a similar speech and demand at the offices of the other newspapers where he ran the advertising as well. So they all had the same wording. He lost the election. Again. He did not, however, complain about his advertisement this time. The last story is called Can't Use a Competitor. I work on cell phone towers. I used to work in an extremely remote rural area for a now defunct small cell phone company. The area I worked was the type of area where you could drive for hours and not see anything but field, forests and animals. Most of the sites I had were what is referred to as island sites, meaning they don't hand off to another cell tower. And most of these sites were about 30 minutes apart on a good day. So it came around that a competitor had located quite a few sites near our sites. I, being of the mindset of efficiency, purchased a phone from them and with approval from my boss kept it ready, especially during upgrades. But he was the type, when anyone above him says boo, he'd jump and ask if he jumped high enough or should jump again. So a couple of months later, boss's boss leaves and we get a new boss's boss who'd spent his life in the confines of New York City. Within his first week he's working the switch and sees me call in from our competitor's number. Of course he takes offense to this, and it quickly comes down that nobody may use a competitor's phone. I bring up my concerns, but you know, they don't need to do this in New York City, so we are not going to do this. Mind you, my job is to shut down our sites and upgrade or repair them. And so it happens a short time later. I'm at one of my most remote sites, a 45-minute drive to the next site on a good day, about 4 hours from home. I do my diligence, call the switch, tell them that I need them to change and shut down the site. An hour later, the site is not up. I go through everything on my end. Yep, everything's good. Now there are a couple of payphones, but they were the competitor's phones. So I start driving. It takes me about 1.5 hours to get to the next site because of a freak blizzard. That site is down too. Roll on to the next site. Usually about 30 minutes, but it's snowing hard and the roads are bad. 2.5 hours on the road after leaving the original site, I finally get service. I pull over and in 5 minutes we figured out the switch crossed a number and took down the wrong site. Switch promises to fix it and I drive 3 hours back to the original site. 30 minutes later, it's still not up. This time it takes an hour to get to the closest site. I call the switch again. They get it up and after about 30 minutes I verify it's up. Hooray! But I still have to drive back, clean up and make some testing calls. 18 hours after I left my driveway, I pull back in and submit my time, complete with the overtime. It's my Friday. I turn off my phone and hit the bed. Monday morning, I turn on my phone for our weekly call-in meeting and it buzzes with new texts and voicemails for 20 straight minutes, all from my boss and boss's boss. I jump on the call and the first thing I hear is the boss's boss. Why the heck did you have a nearly 9-hour outage for a 30-minute upgrade? Before I get a word in, he continued. And how dare you claim 9 hours of overtime when you were clearly messing around not doing your job? Well, there were a series of issues outside of the site, and a freak snowstorm slowed my response. I hit send on emails I had already prepared before clocking out for the weekend with the full rundown of events of the night. It was a reply to the emails coming down from him dismissing my needs for a competitor's phone. And I included his boss, the vice president of the company. I don't want to hear excuses from you. Why didn't you just use a payphone and call for help? Literally everyone on the call groaned. In case you don't remember, I just replied to a series of emails where you forbade me under threat of termination from using a competitor's phone. At this point, I hear the VP join our call. And since payphones are owned by a competitor, I spent 6 hours driving around in a blizzard searching for service, instead of spending 45 minutes to an hour in making a call on a competitor's phone. I never threatened to terminate anyone. Don't be stupid, you could have used a payphone. The VP cuts in. It appears that you do not remember what you said. He has clearly documented his actions on the night in question. Please call me immediately. Thank you everyone else for your time this morning. Please have a good day. This meeting is over. Boss's boss was removed shortly afterward, having a fairly rocky rest of his short employment. I now work for the company which purchased our competitor. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.